This video is going to cover the entire lesson of simplifying rational expressions. So I'm going to go through quite a bit of it. We'll give you a chance to practice quite a few of them as well. Now, first what we want to do is go through the objectives. First is we're going to try to identify some common factors that we can pull out. Then we're going to reduce rational expressions. That common factor part is going to be the most challenging. Reducing it's going to be a piece of cake. But the big thing that you've got to realize is that this lesson will build on this lesson throughout the rest of this chapter. Okay, anytime we're doing adding or subtracting, multiplying, any of those types of things, we're going to be using these same processes as we go forward. All right, so I want you to try this warm-up. Go ahead and push pause now. I want you to do all three of these. Push pause now, and then come on back and push play. You can check your answers. Check your answers here. So hopefully you could see that this 16/20 just reduces down. 4 goes into both of them. 4 goes into 16 4 times. 4 goes into 25 times. This one here, we've got an x on top and bottom, so you need to have canceled those two out. Remember that if it's the same on top and bottom and it's multiplication like it is here, we can cross those off. All right, now 2/4 just reduces down to 1/2. This factoring, this sometimes troubles students. Factoring, remember, we need two numbers that multiply together to give us c. In this case, c is -16. But add together to give us b, and b in this case is 0. There is no b. So that would be -4 and +4. So x minus 4 times x plus 4 would be our factors. We're going to build on this quite a bit as well, so we've got to be really efficient at factoring. Hopefully you are at this point. All right, so when we're simplifying these, we've got kind of a process that we need to go through here. We can't have a 0 in the denominator, and we're not really going to worry too much about that right now. But basically what we want to do is pull out any common factors on top and any common factors on bottom, then start crossing stuff off. But remember, it must have a multiplication sign. It must be multiplying in between them, otherwise we cannot cross them off. All right, so if we look at our example here, this is the one that you did in warm-up. 16/20. If I pulled out a common factor, they both have a common factor of 4, right? 4 times 4 is 16, and 4 times 5 is 20. So now that they have that common factor, I can just cross off the common factor. That leaves me with 4/5. Now let's look at another one, but this time let's add in a variable. So our variable here is x. And I did this one a little bit different than what we did for the warm-up for number 2, because I wanted to show you, I wanted to make it just a little bit more complicated because we've got an x squared here. All right, so on this one, I can take out my common factor. My common factor is 2. And then the rest are just x's. And I just wrote my x's just like this. X times x, that makes it easier when we're trying to cross them off because this is x squared, which is the same thing as x times x. So now we just start crossing off what's the same on top and bottom. Notice how these are all multiplication, so we can cross these off. My 2's are the same on top and bottom, I cross those off. And I also have an x that's the same on top and bottom, so I can cross off that x. Now, I have something left on the bottom, 2 times x, which is 2x. What I'm left with on top here is I actually always have a 1. So anytime you basically cross off everything on top, you're still left with a 1. So this will give you a 1/2x. Now I want you to try these two. Basically, you want to look for anything that's common factors on top and bottom, pull those off to the side, and then start crossing off top and bottom. So go ahead and push pause now. And when you're ready, come on back and check your answer. Check your answer here. So both of these on the bottom one, number 2, they both had 12 in common, so we could pull out a 12, cross those off. This x, they only had one x on the top, and that was it, and so it left it alone. Number 1, remember that if we cross those off, everything on the top, we're still left with the 1, because basically this is 4 times 1. Everything is times 1, so we're always left with that 1 on top. All right, I want you to try a little bit more complicated now. Now we've got variables on top and bottom. Go ahead and push pause right now, work through your problem, and then whenever you're ready, come on back and push play. Check your answer here. Now, this one I've got set up a little bit different just because this is b to the -2 power. That is if we moved our b on top, or if you wanted to do the 5 minus 7, which would give you a -2. If you use this method where you just cross them off top and bottom, you can clearly see that the b's are on bottom, and so that makes it easier for you, and that's okay too. There's nothing wrong with that. Just check to make sure number 2 is correct as well. All right, now what I want you to do, we've got this one here. We need to get a little bit of practice on pulling out a common factor. You've got to look at this and say, okay, what do these two share in common? This isn't 1.5, but this is number 1, is 5x plus 10. What do 5x and 10 have in common? Well, they share a 5 in common. So if I were to pull a 5 out, what am I left with? So when we pull a 5 out, then we use our parentheses after that. So it's 5, and then if I pull a 5 out of 5x, it just leaves me with 1x. And then 10, if I pulled a 5 out of 10, that leaves me with 2. So this is the same thing as 5 times x plus 2. Now remember, we're not changing the values here. So we should always be able to multiply these back in and get my original one. Well, 5 times x gives me 5x, and 5 times 2 gives me 10. So I've done that one correctly. So that's a good way you can try to make sure that you're doing the process correctly. All right, now let's try these two. I want you to do these two on your own. Pull out the common factors here. Push pause now whenever you get your answer. Come on back and push play. Check your answers here. So on number 3, we actually they shared a 3 in common, but they also shared a y in common. So we want to get used to pulling those out as well. Anything that they share in common, regardless of whether it's a number or a variable, either one. All right, last one. Go ahead and try this one, and then push pause now. Come on back and push play when you're done. Check your answers here. Again, on that one, we had a number and a variable that came out. That's going to become important because we're going to have that either on the numerator on top or the denominator on the bottom of a fraction. So we're going to need to be very proficient at that. All right, so now let's look at one here. Now I've got to look at this one, and up top, it's just 2 times x. Down below here, though, it looks like they share a common factor here. So that's what we were just working on. So we need to see what that common factor is and then pull that out. So if we look here, 2x and 10, they share a 2 in common. So I'm going to pull out a 2. So I'm going to rewrite this, but I'm going to rewrite it with a 2 pulled out. So this is the same thing as 2 times x. And on bottom, it's going to be 2 times x plus 5. 2 times x gives me 2x. 2 times 5 gives me 10. So I know I did that one correctly. Okay, now our rule on this one, remember, was that in order to cross them off of top and bottom, it had to be multiplication. So right here, I can't just cross off this 2x and on top and bottom because I've got this addition sign here. Remember, it has to be multiplication. So now it is multiplication because this is 2 times the quantity of x plus 5. So I can cross off these 2's right here. I cross off those 2's, that leaves me with x over x plus 5. Now, it feels like we should be able to cross these x's off, but unfortunately we can't because this right here is addition. It's not multiplication. So it would change its value. Okay, now on this one here, I want you to go ahead and try it. We're going to do the same thing that we did before. Don't worry so much about this that I have on the bottom here. Just realize that we cannot cross these x's off because of this addition sign. So I want you to do this one. I'm going to leave this one up here kind of as an example. So go ahead and try this one, and then push pause right now, and then when you're ready, come on back and push play. Check your answers here. And this one's set up almost identical to what we did over here on the left. You pull out your 3 here and cross those off. The only difference is we've got an x and a 2x here. But again, we can't reduce those because of this addition sign. We would change its value, so we can't do that at all. All right, now I'm going to give you another one to work on here. Work on these 2. And these are fairly complex. These are a little bit more challenging than the one that you just did. So go ahead and push pause now, work out your answers, and then come on back and push play when you're ready. Check your answers here. Okay, so on the first one, we had a 2 and an x that were in common, so we could pull those 2 out. On the bottom here, this is all multiplication, 2 times 3 times x times x. And on this second one here, we ended up with a b squared on top, so that's okay. And we've got a b cubed on bottom, but because of this addition sign here, we cannot just simply cross those out. All right, let's get a little bit more practice here. Try these 2. Push pause now, and when you're ready, come on back and push play. Check your answer on both of these. Now, number 1, I gave you 2 different options. You can write it as 2m plus 8, or you can write it as 2 times the quantity m plus 4. Because if you factored out their common factors, you actually factored out a 4m, which left you just m plus 4. Either way here will work just fine. I'll accept both answers. So neither one of those will be a problem. Hopefully you're starting to kind of get the knack of it a little bit. If you're not, go on back and rewind just a little bit and try those problems again. Okay, now I want you to factor these. We need to get a little bit of practice on factoring these. We learned these several times, but remember it's two numbers that multiply together to give us C, but add together to give us B. Go ahead and try both of those. Check your answers here. All right, hopefully you got both of these. Remember, we need to use, whoops, let me back up just a second. There we go. Both of these, remember that we need to use the correct variable, so don't use x plus 4 and x plus 9. That would not work. It needs to be a w here in this case. All right, now let's get just a little bit more practice on that. Try both of these two, and push pause now when you're ready. Come on back and push play. Check your answers here. All right, now we need to use that, but this time we're going to use it with some rational expressions. So we've got this one on, and it's got a quadratic expression on top and a quadratic expression on bottom. Quadratic just indicates that it's the x squared on top and on bottom. So we need to factor both of these. That's our first rule. Our first goal is to factor top and bottom. So we're going to factor this two numbers that multiply together to give you negative 10, but add together to give you negative 3, are going to be negative 5 and 2. I'll bring those in right now. And then this one has positive 3 and positive 2. So, and notice how I'm using parentheses here. That really helps. Now, our rule is that it must be multiplication. Well, this one has an addition sign, but we can cross this one off because we're crossing off the entire quantity here. This entire x plus 2. I can't just cross off these x's. That does not work. But if I cross off the entire x plus 2 on top and bottom, that will work because it's the entire quantity. So let's do that now. The x plus 2 is gone. That leaves me with my answer, which is x minus 5 divided by x plus 3. Now here I cannot cross off these x's because I've got this addition and this subtraction. If I had an x minus 5 quantity on the bottom, I could cross off this entire quantity. I don't, so I can't. So that's a big thing. If you can cross off the entire quantity, everything inside the parentheses, then you'll be okay. That's fine, because that's quantity multiplied by something else. All right, now let's get some practice here. I want you to do both of these two. So push pause now, work through the problems. When you get your answer, come on back and push play. Check your answers here. All right, so this one, now number 1 ended up being a plus 4 over 1. We don't write anything over 1, we just simplify it to a plus 4. Hopefully number 2 made sense to you. You got that one and you're sitting pretty good on that one. That one wasn't as challenging. Let's try both of these two. Go ahead and push pause now. When you're ready, come on back and push play. Check your answers on both of those. You should starting to understand a little bit better, starting to get more answers correct, hopefully. Check your answers, make sure that you got them correct. If you didn't, then see what you got wrong on them. All right, try these two right here. And number 1 is a little bit more of a challenge only because of the way that it's written. But go ahead and try both of those two and push pause now. When you're ready, come on back and push play. Check your answer on both of these. Hopefully you're starting to get the feel for both. Big thing is on this one, make sure that you have a 1 on top over your r minus 7. All right, now I want you to try these. Now, number 1 and number 2, for that matter, it has the, you need to factor both of those, and we're using our Berry method. Remember, that's a times c, so 5 times negative 12. Two numbers that multiply together give me that, but add together give me negative 11, and then you're going to factor out the common factor there. So that's going to take a little bit more work, but go ahead and try both of these right now. Push pause now, and then when you're ready, come on back and push play. Check your answer on both of these. These are a lot more challenging. Both of these two are. Only because of the factoring necessary. For this one, you've got a 5n plus 4, and then you end up with a 5n minus 15. You had to factor out the 5. So you need to get a little more practice on those. You will have some of those on your homework and on your test as well. Okay, try these two here. and go through the same process that we were doing. We're just giving you more practice on it. Push pause now. When you're ready, come on back and push play. Check your answers. All right, so we've got enough practice on these. Hopefully you should be doing fairly well in it. I have other videos as well that you can go in and watch on specific problems, get a little bit more practice on. But you should be getting fairly familiar with the process, at least on how to do these. Now you just need to get a little bit more practice on it.